Hi, this is Jim Lang. This is the second in a video series of the best estate plan for traditionally married couples, particularly in the light of the pending legislation that we are calling the death of the stretch IRA. So before I talk about the essence of the plan, the right way to do it is for you to get the background of it first. And it's probably even more important when the underlying asset is an IRA or a retirement plan. So the first basic question is, what happens to your IRA or retirement plan at death? And that's what I'd like to get into the nitty-gritty a little bit on this video, and then in subsequent videos I'm going to try to tie in how you should best utilize the Lange Cascading Beneficiary Plan or the best estate plan for married couples with traditional families. So I'm going to use an example here of somebody who is 69 years old and has $1 million in their IRA. So let's forget about dying for a moment. And because they are not yet 70, or if we're going to get technical, April 1st of the year following the year they turn 70 and a half, the minimum required distribution is 0. Then what happens is you go to the next year and you see this number 27.4. And what is that? That comes from publication 590. All right, so what does that mean? That is the divisor, which means to calculate the minimum required distribution, you take the divisor, in this case 27.4, you divide it into the balance of the IRA as of December 31 of the prior year, and that's how much your minimum required distribution is. Now, at 27.4, that's a little bit less than 4%. If it was 25, it would be 4% exactly. So a little bit less than $1,060,000 is $38,000. So that's the minimum required distribution of the IRA. So what is that 27.4? Well, what it really is it is based on life expectancy, and they're assuming that the IRA owner at age 70 has let's say I'm going to round off and call it a 17-year life expectancy, but they're going to give the IRA owner a bonus, and the actual calculation, the number 27.4, is the joint life expectancy of the IRA owner and somebody deemed 10 years younger than the IRA owner, even if the beneficiary is the IRA owner's spouse, who is the same age as the IRA owner. So then you'll see that over time, the life expectancy factor goes down, meaning the minimum required distribution of the IRA goes up and up and up. And that pattern continues. When does that pattern stop? Well, at the death of the IRA owner. So we're assuming that the IRA owner dies when he's age 86. By the way, interestingly enough, even at a 6% rate of return, he is close to $1.2 million when he started with $1 million, notwithstanding that he's taking out distributions of $38,000, $40,000, $53,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, etc. per year. So he is gone. Let's assume for discussion's sake that he names his spouse as the primary beneficiary of his IRA, and for these simple purposes, let's assume his spouse takes all that money. Then what happens is the spouse, and I'm assuming she was the same age as him, more or less continues on that same pattern. That is her life expectancy plus the bonus of 10 years in the joint life expectancy. So that pattern continues pretty much. Now let's get to the real meat of it, which is when she dies, so we have a non-spousal beneficiary. Okay? Now the non-spousal beneficiary, let's presume for discussion's sake it's children, and let's say that they're about 60 years old. And what I'm talking about now is the existing law. So the kids, they will have what is called a minimum required distribution of the inherited IRA. And that's money that they have to take out, just like you did, but they have to take it out the year after you die. So how does the existing law work? They take their life expectancy, in this case 25.2, again very close to 4%, divided by the $1 million in the IRA, or actually inherited IRA, they get $42,000. They must take that out, pay tax on it. Next year, same deal, except the minimum distribution is a little bit higher because the divisor is lower. Now, by the way, you'll notice that notwithstanding the fact that they're taking out distributions, that the inherited IRA continues to grow. So these are all the annual distributions that are coming out of the IRA, and that pattern continues for the life expectancy of the beneficiary, which in this case is age 86. So they're taking all these distributions, and this is a great tax deferral. So I'm a big fan of pay taxes later. So what's even more fun if you could afford it? Well, what if the beneficiary, instead of being born in 1980, let's say it was a grandchild who was, let's say, born in 2010, how would that look? Well, it's going to be the same for the husband and wife, but then when the husband and wife die, instead of having a 60-year-old inherit, let's say you have a 30-year-old inherit. So the 30-year-old still has to take a minimum required distribution of the inherited IRA, but they could use a divisor that is much higher, again from a different table, but in publication 590 of 53.3, a much smaller minimum required distribution of the inherited IRA, leaving even more and more money to keep growing tax deferred. Next year they have to take out a little bit more, et cetera, et cetera. But the total distributions using that strategy would be, this is both the husband, wife, and grandchild, $8.2 million. Now, if we really want to have some fun, let's do it with a Roth, where we're just going to go from normal to Roth IRA. So now we have no minimum required distributions for husband and wife. The kids will still be able to get this stretch inherited Roth IRA. Now, they will continue to have to take minimum required distributions of the inherited Roth IRA, but all those distributions will be tax-free, and the total distributions to the grandchildren would be $25 million. All right, now most people leave money to their kids before their grandkids, but that's going to be part of the strategies that we'll be talking about with Lange's Cascading Beneficiary Plan. By the way, just compare this. All right, let's just go back to the regular IRA instead of the Roth. So the total distributions for the family, if the grandchildren are IRAs, are beneficiaries of the IRA, is $8.2 million, where if we change the beneficiary, instead of being born 2010, let's go back to 1980, where we had it before. So $3.7 million. So you can see the enormous benefit of having a younger beneficiary. So it's usually better to have a child than a spouse. It's usually better to have a grandchild than a child, just in terms of tax deferral. Now, of course, you might prefer that your spouse get the money than your child, and that your child get the money before your grandchildren, but let's say the background to really understand the power of Lange's Cascading Beneficiary Plan, which we consider the best estate plan for married couples, is to understand the basis of this. Now, subject to exception, we have a whole slew of videos on it, and I'm not going to go into all the exceptions, but subject to exception, the death of the stretch IRA, which we believe is going to pass sometime in either 2017 or, the way things look now, more likely in 2018, is what's going to happen is the income tax, instead of being able to stretch over the child's or grandchild's life, is going to be accelerated, and the child or grandchild is going to have to pay income tax on all but a $450,000 exclusion of the inherited IRA within 5 years of the IRA owner's or your death. So this is going to be potentially devastating. Again, it's not law right now, but it is looming, and we're going to see in the next video why it's so important to have flexible estate plan. But this has been, let's call it the background, that shows what happens at death for an inherited IRA and what happens at death with an inherited IRA under the proposed new tax law. That will be the basis going forward for the next several videos on the best estate plan for married couples with traditional families. Thank you.